Hi, this is Marguerite Uhlmann-Bower, episode 2, Wild Foods Foraging. Glad to see you're back again. I'm excited to have you here. And this is a continuance of our dedication to bringing wild foods and the foraging of wild foods to all people, especially in these times that we need to know about this now. We'll be covering a number of plants today that, as promised, was coltsfoot and yellow dock and elecampane, as well as oxeye daisy. And next week, who knows what we'll do, but most likely it'll be burdock and dandelion. They're very much staples in the garden. And also, we're also trying to put together the tools of the trade and having mindfulness around how we're harvesting the plants and trees that are our medicines, that are our foods. So welcome. Who do we have here? Look at these curly leaves. Very, very curly at the edges. Having a floret type of formation and having slightly reddish coloring right now. They won't keep this coloring. This coloring is because of it being so cold out still. What we have here is one type of a yellow dock. Rumex crispus. Crispus because of these crispy little edges. Also known in other cultures as sorrel. This particular yellow dock, common name, is in the buckwheat family. So it's very, very edible. The leaves are edible as is, or it can be cooked, or sauteed, or boiled, or steamed. Sometimes when the leaves get really, really big, some of you remember me giving a class on creating something called avaluk, which is the leaves of this particular part of this particular yellow dock, because there's another type of yellow dock. But this particular yellow dock, because it sours well and ferments well. We'll try to do that this summer in a little demo. What part is edible right now, and it's out right now, are the leaves. It could be the green leaves. It could be the burgundy red leaves. And you might be thinking, oh, but aren't they tough? Yeah, it could be a little tough right now. But, you know, with a little bit of chewing or a little bit of cooking, you can get rid of the toughness. And it's actually right now better to cook these leaves, because if you're going to have a lot of these leaves, they're very high in oxalic acid. So you might want to cook out some of that oxalic acid, especially if you're sensitive to that. And then you can throw it in sautés and stir fries. This freezes nicely. You could blanch it for about a minute and then freeze it for the next time, so you preserve the coloring and you preserve the nutrients and the flavor too. I usually don't like to really talk about plants without having their flowers, but this is an easy one to identify here in the Northeast. There isn't any necessarily poisonous lookalikes that we would have to worry about. Still, first time harvesting and identifying, do bring someone with you. Look at these beautiful plants here. Here we have another buckwheat family plant, who also goes by the common name yellow dock. Yes, this is another yellow dock. Rumex obtusifolius. Also with some red coloring in its center vein. Other leaves are just purely green. Very common, very, very common for that to happen. Let me show you the difference between the yellow dock with the curly leaf yellow dock to this broadleaf yellow dock. You see the difference? They both have very strong center veins, but the one we looked at before has very curly edges. And the one we're looking at now is more of a not so curly edges, but very broad-leaved. That's why they call it broadleaf yellow dock. So these two are also edible. The leaves are edible, same as the curly-leafed yellow dock also is edible. Edible raw, cooked, steamed, sauteed. But the important thing to remember is both yellow docks, whether they're the curly-leaved or the broad-leaved, they're pretty high in oxalic acid. So if you're sensitive to oxalic acid, it is really good to first cook that out of them. And we'll look at these two plants as they grow through the season because they completely change. They also have similar nutrients and similar medicinal qualities. There is one thing though that they do that not all plants do here in the Northeast, and they have a 2-year life cycle. That means that they are called biennials, meaning that in their first year they're in a rosette and live close to the ground, and they don't create any flowers or seeds. And it will be next year that they will continue to be in a rosette, but by the time June, July comes, they start sprouting up a center stalk, and the center stalk gets flowers, and they'll go to seed. Here we go again. Okay, what do we have here? We're all still seeing these beautiful yellow flowers that look like dandelion. They're in the same family as dandelion. They're a composite family, also known as aster family plants, meaning lots and lots of flower petals. More than 7. This one definitely has more than 7. But we can see that it's not dandelion because dandelion doesn't usually have these little outcroppings. But this is an important plant because for me this plant signifies that spring is here. And these are one of the first flowering wild plants that we see. A lot of gardeners will say, oh, our crocuses are up or our daffodils are up. I say, oh my God, it's spring. Coltsfoot. Coltsfoot is the scientific name, Tussilago farfara. Tussilago farfara. And one of the first things that coltsfoot does is it flowers before it creates its greenery. And here we have a plant that has already flowered and is creating the greenery that is coming. And these leaves will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they'll get to as big as sometimes about yay big. But one thing you'll notice when you look up close to these leaves is that they have a very familiar shape. And if you look at it really good, it looks like a horse's hoof, hence the name coltsfoot. So the leaves and the flowers I don't tend to eat, but you can put the flowers in sautés or in salads. And you can do the same to the smaller leaves. But what I like to use coltsfoot for, and a lot of you out there had asked for medicinal components of plants. This plant for me is a very strong, has a very strong effect on the lungs in that it's a helpful expectorant and a very helpful moistener for the lung tissue. Making it into a tea is one of the easiest and fastest ways to use this plant to help expectorate and cough up and cough out. any kind of mucus that might be stuck in there. Very gentle, very soothing, and very easy to use. Their leaves will be out all summer long. Their flowers that we see here will start to seed out. The seeds will move into the ground and create new plants for next year. Okay, so as promised, we said that we would look at elecampane. And so here we have the beginnings of elecampane. This is a very stately, large plant. For those of you who may not know, this plant is going to get as tall as 7 to 8 foot tall. Look at its stoutness. And these leaves are only very small leaves right now. They're going to get very huge and make a very great, strong center stalk. They make a very big presence in the garden. They're one of the first plants you see when you come down the driveway. We will watch this plant through its ages so that you can understand what it looks like, what they look like, and how we could use them. I like elecampane because it has a very strong properties in its roots, as well as its leaves, but more so in the roots that are for the lungs. So like we said, coltsfoot is good as an expectorant for the lungs, very moistening and gentle. Elecampane is doing the same thing for the lungs, but also in a more strong way, but it also has an antimicrobial properties to its roots and to its leaves. It's very antimicrobial for the lungs. And the leaves can be eaten as is, so can the roots. The leaves have a sweet-ish and bitter-ish taste. But the roots, if we could find some roots here, are very potent and pungent in their flavors. This is their smaller roots. I wish you could smell this. It smells sweet, it smells bitter, and it smells pungent and tastes all of those as well. Could you imagine having a root of food that has all those three qualities? And it has a very strong action on the lungs. The leaves I like to use as a gentle tea. The roots are when I need something stronger as an expectorant, as a lung expectorant, as a lung antimicrobial, and as a lung diaphoretic. It helps get rid of extra moisture in the lungs. When do you harvest the leaves? You could harvest the leaves now, but I'm going to wait because there's only 2 leaves and I want the plant to be able to sustain itself. But if you need the roots, the ideal time of the year to take roots from any plant that we need for medicine would be either in the spring or in the fall. And that's when all the medicine is in the roots. In a few weeks, all the medicine is going to start going up into the leaves. Scientific name, Inula. Inula. It's an Inula species plant. What does that mean for us? The root is full of inulin. It's one of the most major plants that have high inulin content. What is inulin? Inulin is a fiber, and it's the type of fiber it is that it's a fiber that feeds our gut flora to become healthier and in a healthier state. Like when we buy the powder that is inulin powder, that's what elecampane has in the plant's roots. Tons and tons and tons of inulin. It's also a composite family plant. So we're looking at a lot of composite family plants today, meaning that its aster has many rays, flower petals. Actually, if we look at coltsfoot right here, like this, you can just imagine elecampana's flower being about that big, looking almost like coltsfoot. There's many more qualities to the plants here that we're seeing today. Just know that I'm giving you enough information so that you could make good choices onto what to bring into your life for now. If you want to know more, start coming to some of the plant walks that we're going to be having, albeit very different this year. Have any questions, please always feel free to write me or Facebook me. Who do we have here? We have ox-eye daisy. I'm going to harvest the leaf so I can show you better what we're looking at. And this is a very deeply lobed leaf with a very strong stem that leads directly into the leaf with a strong center vein. No hair, very hairless. All the ox-eye daisy leaves right now have this very similar look. Some will be will have a larger leaf. Some will be this size. And when ox-eye daisy flowers, which the ox-eye daisy will be doing that very, very shortly, maybe in another 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have a very strong center stem for the flower that will protrude and have several outcroppings, and all of a sudden one day the flower opens and it's the very typical flower that has many, many white rays with a very center yellow. And at this point, why we like ox-eye daisy is because the leaf offers a wild sweetness that many, many wild plants don't have in the Northeast. Usually they're bitter or sour or bland or pungent or just don't taste so good. Ox-eye daisy is delicious tasting. It's very, very subtle in comparison to when we try fennel seed. If any of you have tried a fennel seed tea, ox-eye daisy has a fennel type of taste. Slightly sweet, slightly moist. Ox-eye daisy is in the composite family. And the reason I like to mention families is this. If we're allergic to a plant that is in a particular plant family, it's good to know about because we might be allergic to other plants in that same family. So it's just a good thing to know. How do we consume ox-eye daisy? We can consume ox-eye daisy leaf as a tea. We can consume it as a fresh leaf in salads, and or you can consume it just as a grazing plant and while you're in your garden. Now remember, don't take all the leaves. Just because it's good for you, more isn't better. And you want to leave some leaves so the plant can do its thing and create lots of flowers and more seeds for next year. That's the circle of life we want to encourage. One thing I like to say about ox-eye daisy, it helps with profuse sweating. So if you're a profuse sweater, drinking a tea or consuming a little bit of ox-eye daisy can help remedy that. It's a nice remedy. We'll continue to look at ox-eye daisy. We'll be seeing ox-eye daisy grow through the next week so that you can see her in her full glory. Hope you enjoyed the plants that we saw today. Look us up on plantpioneers.org. Follow me on Facebook. And next week, we're going to take a look at mullein. We're going to look at both types of mullein, Greek mullein and local mullein, dandelion, and burdock, and all the things we can do with those wonderful plants. See you next week. Thanks for watching.